Please stay with me. Don't leave me now, okay?
You have to keep fighting.
I need you.
Rain hammered the streets, turning the sidewalks into slick mirrors. Sirens screamed in the distance as ambulances raced past. A young girl's life hung in the balance inside the city's top hospital. Doctors were running out of options, their faces pale, their hands trembling over monitors. Every second that passed made the difference between life and death. Outside, a ragged man leaned against the hospital wall, soaked to the bone, his tattered coat clinging to his thin frame. Mud streaked his boots and his beard was matted with grime, but his eyes were sharp, calm, and calculating. He watched the staff rush by, muttering medical terms under his breath, so precise it almost sounded like a command. "Move along, old man," a security guard barked, grabbing the man by the shoulder. "You're not allowed in here." The beggar didn't flinch. He stepped forward, voice steady. "She's dying, and everything you're doing is wrong." The guard laughed. "And you know this how? You don't even belong here. She has less than 3 hours," the beggar said. "If you continue with your current plan, she won't survive." Inside, alarms blared, monitors beeped frantically, and nurses rushed to stabilize the girl. The billionaire father paced back and forth, his designer shoes clicking against the polished floor, his suit soaked from the rain. Usually unshakable, he now looked small and helpless, clutching the edge of the gurney where his daughter lay barely conscious. "Call the top specialists. Bring them here immediately," he barked. "Do whatever it takes. She is not going to die." The lead cardiologist frowned, shaking her head at the team. "We've done everything we can. I've never seen markers like this. Her adrenal enzymes are unstable, and the autoimmune response is aggressive. At this point, we're improvising." The beggar's eyes narrowed. He took a cautious step closer, despite the guards. "You're improvising. You're all making fatal mistakes. She's not dying from the heart. Check the adrenal markers correctly. I can save her." The billionaire froze mid-step. Something about the man's tone, so calm and authoritative, made him hesitate. "Bring him in," he said finally, voice low and commanding. "I don't care who he is. Bring him here now." The guards exchanged nervous glances but complied. The beggar followed silently, water dripping from his coat, moving as if he belonged inside the chaos. Inside the ER, the staff stared in disbelief as he approached the gurney. "I need full access to her charts and vitals," he said simply. The cardiologist frowned. You can't, she's critical. We're trained specialists." "I am a doctor," he replied, calm and firm. "And she is dying. Every second you delay is fatal. Let me do this, and she survives." The billionaire's daughter fluttered her eyes open, weakly moving a hand toward the beggar. Nurses noticed the small gesture. She's looking at him," one whispered. "See? She knows," the beggar said softly. "Trust me." Reluctantly, the cardiologist nodded. "Fine, but I'm overseeing everything. Any mistake, and you're out." The beggar leaned over the girl, examining her with a precision that made the team pause. He checked her pulse, breathing, subtle responses. "You misdiagnosed the adrenal imbalance. Secondary autoimmune crisis is causing multi-organ stress. Adjust treatment now, or she will not survive." A murmur ran through the room. Doctors whispered among themselves. The billionaire gritted his teeth, torn between pride and desperation. "Do it. Save her." The beggar directed the staff, his instructions crisp and exact. They recalibrated medications, monitored vitals, and corrected every small oversight he detected. Sweat ran down his face, mixing with the rainwater still clinging to his hair. Hours seemed to stretch into minutes. The girl's condition wavered, and for a terrifying moment, her pulse flatlined. "No, we've lost her," a nurse screamed. "Not yet," the beggar shouted. "Increase cortisol infusion. Stabilize the enzymes now." Monitors beeped irregularly, then stabilized. The girl's chest rose and fell evenly. Relief swept through the room, but the tension remained thick. The billionaire's chest heaved. Who are you?" he asked, voice trembling with awe and fear. I was once a doctor, the beggar said quietly. One who saved lives for the powerful. The world has forgotten me, but life itself is still sacred. The cardiologist stepped back, finally recognizing the man's skill. Wait, could it be Dr. Elias Marlowe? The medical god who disappeared 10 years ago? The room fell silent. Even the guards stared in shock. The billionaire's eyes widened. Elias? You're alive. I am, the beggar said. And she is alive because every life matters equally. Even a life you cannot buy. The billionaire sank to his knees, overwhelmed by guilt and gratitude. I ruined your life once. I never imagined I'd see you save my daughter. Elias looked at him, expression unreadable. I live in shadows now. Revenge changes nothing. Compassion, that saves lives. The girl stirred, weakly opening her eyes fully. She smiled faintly, her small hand stretching instinctively toward Elias. The billionaire's heart clenched at the sight, knowing his daughter's life was in the hands of a man he had underestimated for years. Outside, the storm began to wane, leaving behind a drizzle. Elias stepped toward the exit, soaked but steady. The billionaire called after him, voice raw. Wait, please, let me help you. Anything you want, name it. Elias paused, looking back once. I need nothing, he said softly. Just remember, life is sacred. Protect it. With that, he disappeared into the wet streets, leaving the billionaire and his daughter behind, hearts full of gratitude and awe. The cardiologist shook her head in disbelief. All this time we were blind. The world forgot him, but he didn't forget what mattered. The nurse pulled out her phone. Everyone watching this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share this story if it inspired you, because sometimes heroes appear where you least expect them. The billionaire's daughter whispered weakly, Daddy, he saved me. He knelt beside her, tears running freely. Yes, sweetheart. Yes, he did. Elias's shadow disappeared into the city night, leaving only the memory of a man who had once been a legend and was now a guardian no one could see. The storm cleared, but the lesson remained. True greatness does not demand recognition. It simply acts, silently, and saves lives in the moments that matter most. The rain had stopped, leaving puddles that reflected the city lights. Inside the hospital, the tension from the night's chaos had shifted to quiet disbelief. Doctors and nurses whispered among themselves, glancing at Elias Marlowe, the beggar who had just saved a life no one else could. The billionaire sat frozen in the corner, still trying to process what had just happened. How is this possible? The cardiologist muttered, shaking her head. He wasn't supposed to be alive, much less able to perform at this level. Elias cleaned his hands with a damp cloth, his eyes scanning the room without pride or triumph. Some things you cannot buy, some things you cannot measure. Knowledge, experience, compassion. They survive even when the world tries to bury them. The billionaire's anger, shame, and curiosity finally erupted. You saved my daughter, Elias, but why now? Why show up as a beggar when you could command the world? Elias didn't flinch. I chose this life. I walked away from fame, from wealth, because the world of power was corrupted. I learned that saving lives is not about recognition. It is about duty. You lost sight of that once. The billionaire's eyes narrowed. Once? What do you mean? Elias's gaze hardened. 10 years ago, you and your associates, your money, your influence, were part of the chain that destroyed my career. I was at the top, known as the medical god, but I refused to perform a surgery that violated ethics. You funded those who framed me. My reputation was ruined, my license revoked, my family gone. And the world moved on. I disappeared, and everyone forgot. The billionaire stiffened, guilt twisting his face. I didn't know the full extent. I thought you left voluntarily. I never imagined. You never imagined, Elias repeated quietly, because you never consider those you think are beneath you. You see people as tools, as assets, as numbers. You forgot what it means to value life. The girl, weak but conscious, reached her small hand toward Elias again. Her eyes were clear, trusting. He helped me, she whispered. The billionaire knelt beside her, swallowing hard. Yes, my darling, he saved you. And I owe him everything. Elias ignored the billionaire, turning back to the monitors, ensuring her vitals remained steady. I am not here for gratitude, he said softly. I am here because someone must act when no one else can. That is what a doctor does, even if the world refuses to remember him. The cardiologist stepped closer. How did you know? How did you diagnose her when we were failing? Elias paused, voice calm but heavy with years of pain. Because I have seen death in forms no textbook can teach. I have learned the limits of human error, and I have learned the value of observation, patience, and intuition. You saw a patient. I saw a life slipping away. The billionaire couldn't take it anymore. I owe you not just for my daughter, for the man you were, the life you could have had. I can't fix the past, but I want to help you now. Name it, anything. Elias shook his head. I do not seek wealth, power, or recognition. All I ask is this: build something that saves lives without greed, without corruption. A place where people are treated fairly, where ethics come before money. The billionaire's face softened, realizing the weight of that request. I will, promise, anything to honor your sacrifice. A nurse quietly leaned in. Everyone watching this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Stories like these remind us that true heroes often hide where you least expect them. Meanwhile, the girl blinked, fragile but smiling. Daddy, he's like a hero from the stories. The billionaire pulled her close, tears running down his cheeks. Yes, yes, he is. For the next few hours, Elias stayed, ensuring every treatment, every dosage, every monitor was correct. The hospital staff, initially skeptical, began to follow his guidance with precision. Even the lead cardiologist admitted under her breath, I have never seen skill like this. Not in textbooks, not in practice. He is extraordinary. Finally, after the storm of action, the room settled. The girl's breathing normalized. The monitors no longer beeped warnings. The staff exhaled collectively. Elias straightened, exhausted but composed. The billionaire stood, his voice breaking. I failed you once, Elias. I let the world destroy you. I will never allow that to happen again. Elias met his gaze, unflinching. Actions speak louder than promises. Build that hospital. Save those lives. Remember, one life, one choice can make all the difference. The billionaire nodded, a silent understanding passing between them. Then he turned to the girl. Sweetheart, you're going to be okay. Thanks to him. She smiled weakly, her hand curling around the billionaire's. He saved me. He's amazing. The rain had slowed to a drizzle outside. Elias moved toward the exit, soaking wet but steady. I will not accept fame or fortune, he said over his shoulder. Only that life is protected, that ethics are honored. The billionaire called out again. Please, let me support your mission. Let me help you build that place of healing. Elias paused at the doorway. His eyes glimmered with both sadness and resolve. Do not waste resources on ego or power. Focus on life. That is all I ask. He disappeared into the streets, leaving behind stunned staff, a grateful billionaire, and a daughter who had been brought back from the brink of death. The cardiologist shook her head, whispering, the world forgot him, but he didn't forget what mattered. The nurse pulled out her phone, a small smile on her face. If this story inspires you, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Heroes appear where you least expect them. The billionaire stayed by his daughter's side, holding her hand, the weight of guilt and gratitude heavy on his shoulders. Outside, the city lights reflected on wet asphalt, showing the outline of a man who had given everything without expecting recognition, a beggar who was a medical god. Hours later, after the girl had been moved to recovery, the billionaire called his most trusted associates. Prepare for a new initiative. We're gonna fund a hospital, a real hospital for those who can't pay. This man, Elias Marlowe, he has reminded me of what really matters. The staff, still in awe, quietly cleaned up. Some exchanged glances, knowing they had witnessed something extraordinary. A story that would be told for years. Elias walked through the rain-soaked streets, passing neon signs and late-night shops. Children played in puddles, unaware of the hero among them. Homeless men watched from corners, some nodding slightly, as if they recognized a kindred spirit. He did not stop. He never sought applause. His reward was knowing one life was saved, and perhaps, in the future, many more. The billionaire sat in silence in his office later, staring at the rain-streaked window. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "I hope he sees what we build. I hope he believes it's enough." And somewhere in the city, Elias Marlowe disappeared into the night, leaving behind a story of courage, redemption, and the truth that sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones the world overlooks. The night had grown quiet, the storm finally passing. Inside the hospital, monitors now beeped steadily, the rhythm of life restored. The billionaire sat beside his daughter, holding her fragile hand, still overwhelmed by what had just happened. Every fiber of his being was consumed by guilt, gratitude, and awe. "I can't believe he saved you," the billionaire whispered to his daughter, his voice thick. He's amazing." The girl smiled weakly. He was like magic, Daddy. He knew everything. He didn't care about money or fame. He just saved me." The billionaire closed his eyes. "I failed him once. I didn't see him, didn't understand him. But I won't let that happen again. Not now." In the corridor, the staff began to relax. The nurses whispered about the beggar, now gone from sight, wondering who he really was. The cardiologist approached the billionaire quietly. "You know who he is, don't you?" "Yes," the billionaire admitted. "Elias Marlowe, the medical god, once the best surgeon in the country, and now a beggar. But he didn't need recognition. He didn't need reward. He just acted." The cardiologist shook her head. "I've read about him, his cases, his breakthroughs. And now, to see him save a life in the most impossible situation, I can't even describe it." The billionaire stood, pacing, overwhelmed. "We need to honor him. We need to do something right by him, by his mission." Outside, Elias walked through wet streets, blending into the shadows. He didn't look back. He didn't expect praise. To him, the mission was clear: one life saved, one action at a time. A soft glow from the hospital reflected on his soaked coat, and he paused for a moment. For a single heartbeat, he allowed himself a thought of satisfaction, but only briefly. Inside the billionaire's office, he spoke into the phone. "Prepare plans for a new hospital, a proper foundation. Ethics first, treatment for all, no one turned away." Elias Marlowe reminded me of what truly matters. Hours later, the girl's condition had stabilized completely. She slept peacefully, a faint smile still lingering on her lips. The billionaire knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You're safe thanks to him. He's a hero, darling. A true hero." The next morning, the hospital staff gathered, buzzing with stories of the night's miracle. The nurse who had first noticed Elias's medical commands spoke softly into her phone. "If you've been inspired by this story, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Sometimes the heroes the world ignores are the ones who matter most." Meanwhile, Elias found a quiet alley, away from the crowds, and sat down on a damp bench. His hands rested lightly on his knees, eyes staring at nothing, contemplating the chaos he had just navigated. Memories of his past, the fame, the betrayal, the loss, flickered in his mind. He thought of his career destroyed by corruption, the license revoked, the wife he had lost to circumstances he could never forgive. And yet, in saving the billionaire's daughter, he had reclaimed something far greater: purpose. As dawn approached, the streets began to fill with life. Workers, children, and merchants emerged from the shadows of the night. Elias observed quietly, unnoticed. Somewhere, a child smiled, a stray dog barked, and the city exhaled. And in that quiet moment, he understood that one action, done correctly, could ripple far beyond what anyone could see. Back at the billionaire's mansion, the father sat in his study, staring at the rain-streaked window. The thought of Elias Marlowe haunted him. How one man, living in the streets, could hold such power, knowledge, and compassion. He vowed silently to honor Elias's wishes. No publicity, no exploitation, only action. A hospital would be built for the poor, for the neglected, for those who society ignored. And this time, he would ensure it operated with integrity. The girl woke briefly, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy, he saved me, right?" "Yes, my darling. He saved you," the billionaire whispered. "And because of him, we're going to help so many others." Days passed. The story of Elias remained unspoken publicly, but within the hospital, whispers circulated. Staff spoke of the man who had saved a child without seeking fame or reward. Patients and families noticed the changes in treatment, the renewed focus on compassion over profit. And while no cameras recorded him, no headlines celebrated him, the legend of Elias Marlowe grew quietly, in actions, in lives touched, in gratitude silently given. One evening, the billionaire received a call from his closest associate. "The plans are ready, sir. The hospital as requested." "Good," he said, voice firm. "Make sure it's done ethically, fully transparent. No corruption. This is what he asked for. This is the right thing to do." In a quiet park, Elias watched the sunset, his coat still worn and dirty, his hands folded. Children played in the distance, laughter ringing through the air. He smiled faintly, knowing that the small ripples of life he had set into motion would grow into waves. One life saved tonight could save hundreds tomorrow, and that was enough. The billionaire sent a letter quietly to Elias, not asking for recognition, not demanding a meeting, simply acknowledging his debt and promising action in his name. Elias read it later, nodded silently, and placed it in his coat pocket. That was all he needed. The world may have forgotten him, but he hadn't forgotten his purpose. The girl, fully recovered, ran through the halls of her home the next day, laughing, oblivious to the tension that had gripped her family just hours before. Her father watched, tears in his eyes, grateful beyond words, humbled beyond measure. And somewhere, in the alleys of the city, Elias Marlowe walked alone, a beggar to the world, but a god to life itself. That evening, as viewers of this story finish watching, they are reminded that heroes do not always wear capes. They do not ask for recognition. Sometimes the greatest acts of courage, compassion, and genius come from those the world overlooks. If you were inspired by this story, take a moment now, like the video, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more stories that show the power of humanity, courage, and unseen heroes. Remember, true greatness is measured not by wealth or fame, but by the lives you touch and the lives you save. And in the heart of the city, among rain-soaked streets and quiet alleys, Elias Marlowe disappeared into the night, leaving behind a trail of hope, redemption, and the knowledge that one man, forgotten by the world, had made all the difference. The billionaire's daughter slept peacefully that night, unaware of the full depth of her savior's story. But in her dreams, she ran freely, laughing, playing, alive, because one man had remembered what others had forgotten. Life is sacred, and it is always worth saving. Elias Marlowe's footsteps faded into silence, but the impact of his actions echoed eternally. The world may never know his name, but his work, his courage, and his compassion would ripple through countless lives. And that, he knew, was enough.